Welcome to the Earth Your Wild podcast. We're your hosts, Jack and Ellie.
This is the podcast where we talk to industry experts and sustainable business owners to try to answer the question, how do I make my business more sustainable? So today we're chatting to Jonathan Spencer. Jonathan has extensive experience of working in the impact sector. In 2022, he was selected for the On Purpose Associate Programme. Through On Purpose, Jonathan worked with two purpose-led organisations, NHS Healthcare Consulting and Oddbox. Jonathan is now working at Beam, a social impact business that crowdfunds career opportunities for homeless people and supports them in finding and keeping new jobs. Thanks for joining us today, Jonathan.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
We wondered if you could maybe start with just telling us your story, really, of how you got to where you're at.
It's a very long story, but hopefully you'll be able to cut it down a little bit. But yeah, it's quite a long story. Basically, I think I've always described my career trajectory as like a bit of a pinball. I've just been sort of like bouncing around different jobs, trying to sort of like try different things, but without much direction and not really like an awful lot of control over what I was doing. And to be fair, that's probably quite a similar story for a lot of people. When they first like go out to start a career, you're not really sure what you want to do, what you're good at, where your skills lie. You haven't got that experience. And so, yeah, I left university and did a few jobs here and there, but ended up working at Network Rail, so a pretty big public sector company. Started out there on their graduate scheme, did a few different jobs there, sort of in that pinball phase, but ended up working in project management for like multi-million-pound construction projects, the largest one being renewing the roof of Waterloo train station. But to be honest, I eventually got sort of like burnt out. And I think part of that was the realization during COVID that like the reason why I was in the company was because of like the great people that I worked with. But, you know, I wasn't really getting satisfaction out of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And when the team that I was working around was removed during the pandemic, I think that just became more real for me. And to be honest, I didn't really know what I was going to do after that. Up until this point, I didn't really know what success looked like. I thought success was like, you know, getting a certain promotion by a certain age, by earning a certain amount of money by a certain age, by, you know, doing this big project that, you know, people would know what you were talking about. And I feel like I'd always had that bit of conflict within myself around this doesn't really feel like it's for me, but also like not really knowing how to sort of break out of a cycle when you've worked in one place doing different jobs for like a significant period of time. How do you then change direction and do something completely differently? And yeah, so I actually stumbled upon the On Purpose program. I was going through LinkedIn, looking at people that I found inspirational, and I was like, how have these people been successful and gone on to work in some organizations that I find really inspiring? And yeah, I came across a CEO. I think he actually wasn't the CEO at the time, but came across his profile and I found the On Purpose program through it. And at first I thought it was either a scam because they were paying you to go and work in the impact sector, or that like it was just unachievable initially for me. But a few other things happened in the background and I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to apply for this and try it because I'll never know otherwise. So applied for the On Purpose program, bit of a long application process and quite tough competition, but actually got accepted and started on that in April 2022. And yeah, as you said before, Ellie, I worked at two different organizations. So I went into work at NHS Healthcare Consulting as it was then. It's got a different name now. They've had a bit of a reorganization, but working on some different projects there, like a suicide prevention communication plan for London prisons, working on preparing the NHS for its winter discharge plan for 2022, and trying to help people move out of hospital before the winter period. And then went on to work at Oddbox, which was a complete flip. So obviously placement one was kind of my social placement. Placement two was kind of my environmental placement. and was helping Oddbox to understand whether there was an opportunity at the time for a fully reusable box so that they could reduce their packaging consumption and therefore like significantly lower their carbon footprint.
It seems like everywhere I look, I see this kind of like purpose crisis that people are having, and I don't think it's even just young people. I think everywhere I see it, like in my own family and businesses, customers, suppliers. Where does that come from, do you think? Like, what's going on?
It's I think it's a long old answer potentially for that one.
Down the rabbit hole.
I feel like at the moment in society, and this is something that I've heard from other people talking as well, we live in this constant state of like permacrisis, and it's just we lurch from one crisis to the next without really being able to give our full attention to any of them at the same time. Living in a constant state of sort of hypervigilance and fear is not healthy for human beings. And I do think that part of the reason why people are sort of waking up to that is that, we've had our understanding of what was successful, probably dates back to our parents and their parents, and chances that have been afforded to us that they might not have had. And therefore we should capitalize and make the most of all those chances and, go on to university and go and do a master's degree or go and travel the world and that sort of thing. But alongside that is the realization that way of, the way that we've been using our resources on the earth and, the way that has then sort of triggered social inequality to a whole different scale. And like, social inequality and environmental crises are not separate issues. They are so fundamentally linked. It's crazy. But I think there's that kind of wake-up call, which is like, we can't keep going the way that we're going. And therefore, like, why would you want to work, or why would you want to go out and, spend 2/3 of your life in a career that's unfulfilling, that isn't aiding anything in the planet and is only for short-term gain?
What did it's interesting you mentioned like your idea of success changed. So what was it, and what has it now become for you?
I mean, that's again good question. My idea of success, I think it was rooted in what I just explained before. Like it was very much like, I need to have a promotion by a certain time. A lot of comparing myself to others. I joined a graduate program. There was people that went on and like absolutely smashed it, like fair play to them, and they love what they do, which is great. If you can find that and you're happy, that's good. But then I was wondering, like, why have I not achieved that? Like, why am I different to that person? And then you sort of get into this perpetual cycle of like blaming yourself for stuff, when in reality, maybe it's just not in the right place. Maybe your skills are like better used elsewhere. And I really think the On Purpose program opened my eyes to like a very different way of looking at what success is. And I think part of that came through coaching. Part of that was through looking at what people have gone on to do afterwards. And I genuinely think, like, if you've got somebody that has, gone from working for like an advertising firm that might be working with like big tobacco or with an oil company, and they've gone to work with, I don't know, a reusable water bottle, gone to work with a reusable water bottle company. Like, that's such an inspiring story. Like that is redefining what success looks like. That is listening to your, like, that's listening to your heart, that's listening to your head, and like finding equilibrium between the two. I think for me, I don't look at it as like a destination anymore. Like, I don't want to think about necessarily where I'm going to end up just before I retire. If I retire, I don't, no idea at this point. Be nice, but we'll see. But I don't really want to try and think about that. I really want to enjoy the journey that I'm on. And I think like the journey is like self-discovery and like understanding what fits for me, where are my skills best placed, and how can I have an impact that resonates with me and makes me want to turn up every day to a company and do a job that, I can never get tired of, like never getting the Sunday scaries. That is the ultimate aim in life, I think. But for me, what success looks like is just exploration, trying new things, and just really feeling like I'm of use and like making a positive impact on the world.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I've never really had like a proper job myself, but it kind of feels like when I come across people and I see people, it feels a bit like people are just kind of, really stressed or unhappy or whatever in their day to day jobs. And I feel like maybe it's more just a feeling of being comfortable and I don't know. Is it more
It's
just
quite
like
funny that you say you've never had a proper job.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure you've had a proper job.
Founded a company.
No, but do you know what I mean? It's
I think
a little bit
for
different.
you, this is your life though. It's a lifestyle, and I guess like that's almost what you're trying to say, because so many people are stuck in that 9 to 5, aren't they? And they're just waiting for the weekend. Whereas it's like we should get up every day and we should be like excited to go to work, and that should be the best bit of the day. And that's what I aim for as well. And if you're spending each week wishing for the weekend, and then Sunday night you're like, oh, dreading the next day, and you're just wishing to have more holidays, and there's something really wrong, I guess. But I guess so many people are stuck in that. And I guess the real question is, you've managed to transition out of that. So how can people do that? Because I bet there'll be a lot of people that want to know how to do that. Because I know people, I reckon a lot of it comes from school, actually. I know a lot of people that I reckon probably aren't that happy in their jobs. And I think, I went to a school that was very much like, if you get good grades and you get into a good university, then that's it. Your life will be sorted and you'll be happy and everything will be fine. And that, I don't think people are that happy. I think they get to a stage and they're like, did I want to be a lawyer? Did I want to be, I don't know, whatever, architect? So yeah.
100%.
How did you do it?
Oh God. I mean, I think there's a few things in there. I think just to address I think the thing you said earlier about like people living the 9 to 5 and then wanting to sort of get to the weekend. I do think we band around this term of work-life balance, and it is really detrimental. Like there is no work-life balance. You're not a different person at work to who you are at home. You are the same person. There's a TV show called Severance. Great TV show, and it just shows you like what could happen if that actually did happen.
Oh yeah, I watched that actually. Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah.
But I think we really need to get away from this idea, because you aren't a different person. When you go home, maybe you're like a mom, a dad, a carer, or maybe you're like I don't know, like looking after some of your like your siblings and stuff like that, or you've got responsibilities at home, and you should be able to take your full authentic self from that environment back to work and be able to like perform a job that then fulfills you in another way as well. You shouldn't have to think about like being two separate people. Like that's where unhappiness stems from, trying to pretend and act that you're happy with something that you're actually not happy with at all. And I think some of it's down to like fear, because I spent 7 years in an industry, right? And yeah, sure, maybe if I'd stayed there, I could have maybe had a promotion or two by now. Maybe I'd have been earning more money than I am now, but I know for a fact I'd be miserable. I know for a fact I would. And those things grow thin over time. And I think sometimes people say they're money motivated, and perhaps some people are, but I actually think sometimes people just get really bored and they need to chase something. So the only thing that you can chase is like financial gain out of spending your time at a company. Wouldn't it be nice if you actually were like chasing something that would make you ultimately happy? And provided you've got enough to sort of like, I got some really good advice once, and it was like, if you can start a business and you don't get paid lots of money, but you make a positive impact on the world, and you have enough to be comfortable, but not enough that you're going to go out and buy like £1 million yacht and stuff like that, would you start it? And if the answer to that question is yes, then that's enough of an incentive in itself. Like if you're that passionate about something, that's enough of an incentive, because it's not all about like material gain and stuff like that. It's about having fulfillment and purpose and a positive impact on others as well. So that's kind of like part one. How to transition out of a career that you aren't enjoying is tough. Do you know, I'm going to give a lot of credit to my partner. Like we have a rule in the house, and the rule in the house is if you've been moaning about something for 6 months, do something about it, or you stop moaning about it. And we got to that point I think she gave me 18 months, to be fair, with my last job. But it was the pandemic, so it was hard. But it really gave me that push. And I think realizing, you know, I go to social events after work, and like there'd be people there that were sort of like disengaged and disenfranchised and like turned off the same way as me. And like you just ended up in these self-perpetuating negative cycles where you're having a pint at the pub, and you were just not, you didn't, you know, you couldn't say, like, you weren't happy, you couldn't say nice things about what you were doing. It was just like you were all bonded together by this sort of mutual acceptance that you weren't really that happy, which is not really great to like be in. And I think accepting you're not happy is a massive thing. And it's scary, man. Like it's scary going from, you know, a safe company that, you know, your chances of like being fired or made redundant are low, and like you've got fantastic pension schemes and you've got like potential progression opportunities. But I think really what it boils down to is like, are you happy? And if you're not happy, then why are you still there? Like, go and seek some advice, go and speak to people, go and chat to people that have done the change, go and, you know, read up on inspirational stories. There's loads of books out there from different people that have done these things before. I'm definitely not the first, and I won't be the last. And I would also like really encourage anyone that was thinking about it, like to perhaps seek some professional coaches around this thing as well. Like I think during On Purpose, having a professional coach was fundamental to me, like redefining what success looked like, to understanding like what my career could look like in the future, the fluidity of what that might mean. But I do think it really comes down to just being honest with yourself, checking in with a bit of hindsight, and just like, if you're not happy about something, change it. Like it's easier said than done, but if you never start, you'll never finish. I should probably acknowledge as well that like I am talking from like a really privileged position of where like I don't have children, you know, I'm financially secure, and I do understand that there are things there for people. And there's also like barriers in terms of like all like a lot of different things as well for people. So like my experience is my experience, and my journey's been my journey. And like that doesn't mean that you have to compare yourself to me 100%. Like you are in charge of your own destiny and that sort of thing as well. But also appreciate that people come from like very different backgrounds, very different resources, and like, yeah, it can be harder for some people to do it than others. But also at the end, I would also say at the end of the day, like there should also be opportunities for everybody to do something better for the world as well. And, you know, making that leap, whatever situation you're coming from, is scary. Everybody has their own sort of like understanding of that. But yeah, I would really encourage somebody to go and speak to like a coach about it. And like, because I think half of it is a support network around you. And sometimes with these things, you can't necessarily go and speak to like friends and family, because, you know, friends and family might be like, no, you're comfortable, you've got like, you've got a great job. Like they will always, not all of them, but sometimes they'll coach you from a place of safety. Whereas when you go and speak to like a complete stranger and like open up to these things, there's no judgment, there's no expectation. But it's just somebody to go and, like you said, it's to go and bounce ideas around and, you know, explore different opportunities, and like talk to somebody that isn't, they're invested in you, but they're not invested, well, they don't take like any sort of like personal accountability for your actions out the back of it.
How did you kind of decide, because I feel like a big part is finding what your purpose is and what your, you know, what your purpose is. So obviously you come from maybe a more corporate background. How did you find out what that was?
I'm going to be honest, like I don't know if I actually could answer that question right now. So what I feel like at the moment is that I went from like playing pinball, and like my career was bouncing around all over the place, but eventually the ball had dropped down towards the bottom and you'd have to hit it up again with like a new career change or doing something. But ultimately you were still sort of like rattling around playing a game that ultimately you're fighting against gravity, and it's just not going to work. And I feel like I've moved more now towards like playing Tetris, where like the blocks are coming and you've got to fit them in the right places. Sometimes you make a line in it and like you make a connection, and that's a realization. Sometimes they don't fit together, and, you know, it's about exploring and trying new things and being open to that. And like, you know, like I don't know what I will be doing in 10 years time or 5 years time. And that's absolutely fine as well. Like there's no reason why you need to map your life out to that extent. in terms of like knowing that I wanted to do something with purpose, or in the impact sector, probably is the better way to put it. So knowing I wanted to do something with the impact sector, I think it kind of, there's a bit of, so my mum's always worked in the impact sector in a way. Like she works in a school, safeguarding for like vulnerable children, also working with families in like difficult situations and things. And I think found like that incredibly inspirational. And those aren't, I think going back to what you said, Ali, those aren't necessarily the jobs you hear about when you're coming out of education. It's, you know, lawyer, you know, fireman, like you go on and be an accountant or financial advisor or advertising. There's a whole like load of jobs in there that it's almost like that's what's presented to you as career options. But I wonder whether there's something around like changing the way that we educate people around career options to be more values aligned. Like, what do you really value? Is it, you know, helping others as an example, like, or do you instinctively feel like you want to work in like big strategic change and stuff like that? Like, I feel like there's something around that piece, like instead of like just like defining skills, defining values. And like, if I'd have had that maybe when I was younger, and they'd have, you know, perhaps gone through, and I would have worked out that I, you know, like to help people, you know, have creativity in what I do, really value an organization that like invest in your well-being and your personal health and things. Maybe I would have made different choices. Maybe I wouldn't have gone down the career path that I went down. But then, you know, I do think also like 7 years of knowing what you don't like doing is really valuable as well.
Yeah, because I think it's hard to know what you value. I think, especially if you're like leaving school, like how do you know that, and then how do you know you're right?
Yeah,
I suppose that was your way of doing it, was just doing something which you really didn't value
you just have
and didn't want to do.
You just got to do something, really, haven't you? And
yeah,
yeah,
learn from.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think like if you really dug down, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting backwards with my adult head, but like I think if I'd have really dug down into my values back when I was younger, like I do think helping people would have come out of it if I'd have really used some of the tools that I'd had now. Whether I would have listened to it, I don't know. Or whether I think at that age you're quite influenced by like external forces. So, you know, I don't know whether I would have listened to it. But yeah, I do think like if we really, I don't think your values change too much over time. So I'd be intrigued. Maybe if I can invent a time machine and go back, I'll ask myself these questions at some point.
How does it work with On Purpose then? How do they, because presumably they sort of help you work out your values and your purpose?
Yeah, so the program runs for 12 months. There's 2 cohorts a year in London, and they also have cohorts in Berlin and Paris. There's normally about 20 people roughly per cohort. Everybody goes to different placements, and then you swap halfway through. So somebody was at Oddbox before me, and somebody went to the NHS after me, and that's the way that sort of like that works around. But yeah, they pay you London living wage, which is really good, like because they accept that, you know, for a lot of people, having no income is not really possible, because there are other organizations that do similar stuff, but yeah, I couldn't have afforded to have done it without any income whatsoever. So yeah, they give you, they pay you to do it. You go into the organizations, you are sort of pitched as a mid-career professional. So you obviously go and have like mini interviews with all the different placements and sort of express what skills you've had and experiences you've had, and they make a plan together about what they want you to work on. You get coaching, mentoring, and every Friday you go in and you do training on like such a broad range of topics. It's crazy, like from like measuring impact to scaling startups to defining what social impact means to sort of like deep dives into systems thinking. There's a lot of topics that are covered in there, and the idea is that you try and absorb that, as much of that knowledge as possible. They say it's a bit like an MBA for the impact sector, in that respect, that you're taking a full 12 months to really invest in it. And the idea is really, again, it's kind of like this is why I really like On Purpose. Like there aren't any expectations out the back of it. It's not like they go and say, you must go and get a job in like the next 6 months. You know, some people take time out and travel. Some people go temporarily, maybe back into an old career so that they can get some more sort of financial security and then maybe go and start their own thing. People go on to work at some of the placements. I stayed on Oddbox for like an extra month to sort of tie up my project, and then went back into the social impact space, which isn't really what I was expecting to do. But yeah, like I think there's no expectation from On Purpose about it. I think the main thing is that you take your learning and sort of pay it forward wherever you can. And I've actually been asked to go back and work as a mentor with them this year, so super excited to start that.
Nice. And is it more because it's like you mentioned like cohort? So does it help having a group of people that you kind of go through that experience with?
Yeah, I honestly think when I first started, my big thing was like, I want to get a good placement. Like I want to have really interesting, diverse projects to work on. Actually, the best thing that came out of it was like getting to meet like 19 other like lovely people that have all had elements of like similar experiences. And, you know, we still talk on a regular basis. We still meet up on a regular basis. We catch up with each other. We've got our own support network. It's like, it's almost building like a mini community of people who all want to go on and do something different and, you know, want to go and make the world a better place and in their own different ways. But having that support network behind you is something that I've not had before and can't believe how much I value it coming out at the end. So I feel like I came in expecting one thing and actually coming out with like a completely different realization at the other end. So
I think that's always the most magical thing in life, though, right? When you have a group of people, if you can have them moving towards the same destination together, it's even better. But I think that's what everybody values. I think that's the secret is having a community, a group of people with shared values.
Yeah. So from that experience, has that then helped you to transition into the impact sector? I guess that's what we want to know, right?
The purpose-driven economy.
Did it work?
it did work for me. Yeah. Very short answer.
Yes.
Yes, it definitely worked. And I am really grateful for that year. I feel like it was like a really groundbreaking year for me. So,
well, we were wondering, how do people do that if they can't afford to do that?
Yeah, I think my advice for that would be like, be kind to yourself, because like I don't know everybody's personal circumstances, but you know, there might be things that are more difficult for you to overcome or challenges that you're going to face that I won't have faced. So like, again, my journey is my journey, and like I can only sort of recount what I've been on. I think having an interest in whether it's social or environmental or both, like, you know, there's loads of like free online courses, there's loads of like free talks that you can go to, whether that's virtual or in person. You know, trying to find like a local support network that you're interested in, whether that's through like volunteering at an organization or something like that. There's loads of opportunities out there that mean that you can go and try things or go and be part of something that's different to what you've done before, without necessarily having to make such like a radical jump into like a different industry. And through that way, like being sort of like open to conversations with people and like chatting to people at events, and I know it sounds a bit corny, but like genuinely like networking, you're going to hear so many different perspectives. You're going to make some connections that, you know, may be able to give you some advice, give you some mentoring, or, you know, maybe even find an opportunity that is kind of closer to what you want than where you're coming from. So it's really a little bit about putting yourself out there, but also just like, if I know that's not necessarily the ideal for everybody. So like, I think like making the most of like online courses and talks as well, and just like getting a bit of a feel for whether you're interested in the top subject matter and whether that comes naturally to you is like another way of testing it too.
Yeah, I guess just spending your time on trying to invest your time on it, have a bit more intention.
So you work for Beam now. Do you want to tell us a bit more about Beam?
Sure. So Beam is a social enterprise. We help homeless people find jobs in homes, and that's like a really broad definition of what we do. I think coming into it, I was aware that like homelessness isn't necessarily street homelessness. It's people who are sofa surfing. It's people who are in hotels or temporary accommodation. It's refugees that have come over and they have nothing with them, seeking asylum here. And Beam, basically, we work with local authorities and central government, and we help find people jobs and homes, or homes as well. So trying to find them somewhere stable to live tends to be the key one. And then making sure that they've got sort of like financial support to keep that household running is another thing that we look into as well. But it's, in many ways, it's not about us telling people what to do. It's not about us like finding people jobs or finding people homes. That does happen. But what we tend to do is try to give it like a really member first approach. So we call anybody that joins Beam a member. And we try to give it like a really member focused approach by sort of working out with them, what are their wants, what are their needs, what do they find interesting. You know, it's not a case that we just go and like write a CV for somebody. We go and try and teach them the skills so that ultimately they don't need to come back to Beam. You know, if we've got somebody who's sort of had to leave home for whatever reason, quite young, we help them understand what a tenancy agreement looks like. What clauses should you look out for? We help them like negotiate with landlords. We help them with like sustaining the property if anything comes up in the 12-month period after we've rehoused them. But we also help them with like where to search, what's your budget, and like all really fundamental things that seem very obvious to people, like seems obvious to me in my privileged position, but like for other people who don't understand how the system works, it can actually be quite daunting, and that can be a barrier in itself to people being able to like find stability. And ultimately, like the reason why we do this is like local authorities are spending so much money on like hotels and temporary accommodation, and it's not a nice place for people to live either. Like living in a travel lodge being moved every 2 weeks, you know, it's a roof over your head, and it's better in some ways than, you know, being street homeless. But you've got no stability there. You know, people who've got kids who are then all in one room, and like there's got to be a better way of doing this. So that's where Beam came in, trying to give it a real person-centered approach. Alongside that, they also crowdfund for the big financial barriers that people find moving into housing, which is like a first month's rent and deposit and moving costs and furniture costs. You know, we put donation pages on our website, where, you know, you could go on today and donate £10. You could give specifically to one person whose story resonates with you. And yeah, it just gives a bit of a spotlight on everybody's individual stories and why they want to change, why they want to do things differently. And I think it does a lot for like making people realize that homelessness is not just people who are on the street. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of people that experience homelessness in the UK every single year, and the definition of that is like very broad, like I explained before.
I kind of feel like anybody could be, you know, a few bad decisions away from being homeless in a way.
Or like not necessarily even bad decisions. It could be a case that they've been like unfortunate bad luck. Exactly. You know?
Yeah, I think it's really I think it's a really great model, how it's like a crowdfunding model to try and lift people out of homelessness. And I think am I right in saying it's more like it's attacking the real problem, you know? So like it's actually giving people something to be part of and giving them the skills that they need. I think it's quite revolutionary, the idea. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I found Beam like about halfway through my On Purpose journey, like when I was on the program, started donating, and then realized that they had jobs when I was finishing the program. And like what I found when I was applying for jobs after On Purpose was I was getting the most excited for the social impact jobs. And then I was like, well, if these are the ones I'm getting so excited for, maybe I should start sort of trying to focus a little bit more on it. And then saw Beam were hiring, and went through the application process. And
why do you think you were most excited for those jobs where you could have a social impact?
I think that's because that is where a lot of my values lie, in helping others. And like there's, again, you can deploy those skills in like, you can deploy that value in like in other ways as well. But like helping others, perhaps with like pieces around education, with access to things, removing barriers. Like I just find that I've not really necessarily had a chance to have like a very specific impact on individual people. And like it's difficult sometimes because you sort of sit back and I guess you might be able to impact like 40 or 50 people over the course of a year at Beam. And I guess like people who work at like slightly higher levels in more strategic areas, you could argue that their impact could be like 5,000, 50,000, 500,000. But what I really wanted to do was experience the change and like the impact I could have directly, and not in like a I'm coming to help you kind of way. It's like more like, how can I support somebody to like set out like small steps to make a meaningful change in their life, or like give them an opportunity to have a stable home, which then gives them the chance to like find a stable income or to have a bank account. And like, it's not about like me doing any of those things for them. It's like, how can I support somebody in figuring out how to do those things so that they can then go on and have success and not need me? How can I do myself out of a job, essentially?
How does it make you feel knowing that you do that?
I mean, I love turning up to my job, and don't get me wrong, there are some really hard parts in it. And we talk to really vulnerable people at times, and that can take a toll on you as well as an individual. But I would say you can't probably paint too much of your experience around those experiences either. And you can't take that on personally either. You can only help, you can only support in like certain ways. And unfortunately, like Beam can't support absolutely everybody. There are things that are like, there sometimes with members and stuff, there's things that they need to work out before we can then successfully help them. But it's always like the door is always open with Beam.
I suppose it goes back to that kind of community thing a bit. I suppose it's kind of like sometimes maybe these maybe the biggest problem with homelessness is just that people are just so disconnected from anybody else, and that's how they end up in that situation. So maybe just having someone to speak to like you, maybe that just sometimes is enough just to pull people up a bit.
Yeah, I think quite often what I find is when we're calling people, we might have been the first person that's called them for a couple of weeks. And so when we're being proactive about like reaching out and trying to help them, I find like people are really trusting with their stories and their experiences, and they're really open and honest with you. I find that bit of the job just so lovely and rewarding in that way. Like the fact that you can pick up the phone and have a 10-minute conversation with somebody, and at least give them some sort of indicator about like whether we can support them in whatever way, or maybe help move them towards that end goal in some small manner. I think when people fall out of a support network or a community, that's where things can really take a drastic change. Like if you looked at like prison leavers for an example, people who leave prison, they might go back to their home. They might have been out for like 10-15, they might have been away for like 10-15 years. Like things can change rapidly in the world outside in that time. And then they're kind of having to come back and just snap back integrate into it, which is probably why a lot of prison leavers go on to experience homelessness as well. Do
you support a lot of people who have come out of prison?
So we have got some sort of like partnerships with prisons directly, and with like local authorities supporting prison leavers as well. There's lots of organizations, incredible, and this isn't me like being negative on any of the prison systems or anything like that. People work incredibly hard in there, and there's so many charities and organizations that are trying to work in that space as well. Beam is one of them as well, but because it's a very specific cohort of people that you would probably be working with. I also had pathways with like working with Ukrainian refugees, working with Afghan refugees. So I would sort of like put prison leavers in the same sort of, I guess, in the same sort of bucket of, they are a specific group of people that quite often experiences homelessness for whatever reason. And, I think partly down to stereotyping and social pressures, probably also receive the least amount of attention.
Yeah, I saw I just happened to see an article about this, and it kind of shocked me. It was something like the Daily Mail possibly. And I feel like, I don't know, I can't believe they actually did this, but there was, I don't know which prison it was, but I think it was one where prisoners are coming towards the end of their term. So they work with outside businesses to kind of, they're allowed on day release to have a job. So there was a prisoner that was out working at McDonald's maybe one day a week or something. And this journalist decided to take pictures of them leaving the prison. And it was a female, and she was walking along the road, and they were taking pictures of her serving customers in McDonald's. There's some kind of clickbaity title saying prisoner walks to McDonald's and has an ice cream or something, as if we should be outraged that this is happening, and they should just be locked away and the key should be thrown away. And luckily a lot of the comments on it were like, that's ridiculous, obviously, like, people should be supported to come out of prison, because obviously if they come out, I guess there's just nothing, isn't there? But it did shock me. I mean, how do you kind of change people's perceptions? Is that something that you work with? Because I guess you're having to treat, I guess the aim is to treat the cause, not the symptom, isn't it? So does that include kind of, how society views homeless people?
Yeah, I think so. Alex, the CEO, who started being with Seb, the COO, they have both done quite a lot. I mean, Alex has written some books. He's done a TED talk. He's quite active on social media, sort of like flying the flag for Beam, but homelessness in general. He's got a really interesting story about why he wanted to start Beam as well. By all means, anyone who wants to listen to it would really recommend listening to his TED talk. But I do think it's more than just one organization to do that. It's more than just one person or one company that can change that perception. If we were, if you get a stereotype, I think people probably think people who end up in homelessness are lazy, or probably think they're on like drugs or alcohol or something like that. And that's not necessarily the case at all. Like, the majority of people have probably just experienced really bad luck, like Jack said, like just had a couple of really bad decisions, or like had something happen to them that they are in no control of, that has then led to them needing support. And we need to, as a society, get away from this idea of like villainizing people or stigmatizing people because of wherever they are, because ultimately then nothing's ever going to change. Like, if somebody hasn't got a stable home, how are they ever going to get a stable income? And therefore, how would they ever be able to support like some of the social services that we all use every day? And like, surely it's better for us to help pick people up or guide them on a different way, because ultimately then they will then join part of our like society and communities, and like everything will be richer for that as well.
Sometimes I wonder whether, like, in the future, maybe like hundreds of years, like, homelessness won't exist and people will kind of feel like it's this really dumb thing. I mean, it doesn't quite make sense that, we have all these homeless people, yet we have loads of jobs, we have enough houses, we have enough money. There's enough people in society to support each other.
That would be lovely. Like, just treat everybody as a human being, like, it would be lovely if we just had like, everybody could get what they wanted, everybody could get what they needed, and like, we all just treated each other how we would want to be treated. I think that would be lovely.
So I kind of wondered, like, do you think businesses need to sacrifice kind of growth and profitability to be sustainable?
Interesting question.
Deep question.
Deep question. Infinite growth is not achievable on a planet with finite resources. That is just fundamentally true. You can't continue to grow outside of the resources that we've got. And the further that you extract them, the worse the world is going to be for it as well. I don't know whether there's good types of growth, there's bad types of growth, there's probably grey areas of growth. I'm not an economist, so probably not the best to probably to say it. But I think it's not. I don't know if it's sacrifice. I don't know if you're really sacrificing everything. If you're happy with growing at like a certain rate, and like you're happy to have a business that might be constrained to some degree by like the natural resources, you're probably more aware than other people are, and you're probably more likely to care about like the planet and to want to reduce the impact that you're having. I mean, sustainability in itself, like the definition is basically like avoidance of depletion of natural resources in order to maintain like an ecological balance. And I would say most businesses at this point probably don't do that. Whether that's something it's something that we really need to sort of shift towards. I guess my question back is, if you're only concentrating on growth and profitability, where does the planet come in?
Well, I think the businesses that do it right are probably companies like Beam, who actually try to engineer a solution to a problem, whether that's with sustainability or whether that's like a problem in society. I think probably the challenge is most businesses don't start out trying to solve these problems. They start out trying to make money or keep the lights on, or yeah, that's basically it, isn't it? In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think I probably agree with you on that. Like,
and I think that I guess the solution to that is going back to that education thing. You know, it sounds like On Purpose was a really great education for you. You know, but why can't we give everybody that education?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, like, there's so many resources out there outside of like On Purpose anyway. Like, there's so many resources out there. There's so many companies that are trying to do things differently. There's so much inspiration. I don't think you have to look too hard to find stories of people doing things differently. I think there's probably more to be done around educating people around that. And, you know, how do you retrofit sustainability to a business that perhaps, like you said, didn't start out with that in mind? It's always harder to retrofit something after you've already started down the path of like creating something. But I'm actually reading Let My People Go Surfing at the moment.
Okay.
By
nice
book. And I think what I really love about the messages in there is it's just very much about like quality. And to be fair, I feel like that's probably where Reuser Box fits in as well. Like, why would you want to throw something away when it's still like 99% its original like function or like quality? Like, why are we so okay with the fact that we throw things into the recycling or throw things into the bin without really thinking about like the long-term consequences of it? You know, when you discard something that's probably going to go to landfill and will technically never degrade it will get smaller and smaller and smaller, but it will never like be absorbed naturally back into its environment. Why are we okay with that? Like, that can take thousands of years. Why are we okay with thinking about like 20 generations from now, 30 generations from now, they still have to pick up that mess? So I think quality is like a really interesting thing that I do feel like there's more businesses that are sort of pitching themselves that way.
I don't know why it's any idea why it's changing. Why is society getting a bit more purpose driven?
I still think it's got a long way to go, but
yeah,
I mean, like, people have also realized that you can make people are willing to spend more money on something that will last longer. Like, I recently bought an electric toothbrush from a brand called Surrey, and it's probably the most environmentally friendly toothbrush that I could find. It was more expensive than other brands that are available. The new heads on it are like more expensive than other brands that are available, but the quality of it feels like it's going to last me for like a significant period of time. And I'm willing to spend a bit more money if it means that they have, you know, tried to reduce the impact that they've had as much as possible, instead of just churning out tons of toothbrushes over the course of a year. So like I buy into it, I guess. So there's profitability there's profit to be made there. And that's partly down to the fact that I accept, you know, buying the cheapest thing, might not last as long, and therefore I'm going to have to replace it more frequently. But also, like, if I'm in a position where I'm able to sort of like spend more money on something, should I not also take the morally good route and buy something that is going to last longer? And, you know, if I'm able to, I know that's not the same for everybody, but if I'm able to do it, then I should do it as well.
I love the idea as well that they talk about in that book, Let My People Go Surfing, is of like paying a tax to the planet. Obviously, that's where 1% for the planet comes out, because, you know, we pay our taxes for everything else, but everybody forgets about the planet, don't they? And that's
probably a much better investment than the taxes that we have, the other taxes we have to pay.
Quite probably.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, I feel like if more businesses could join that movement, we'd probably be in a much better place.
Because there's the financial cost of doing anything. There's the financial cost of doing business, but it's very opaque, the environmental cost, and like the true environmental cost as well.
We often like to ask guests how you think the world will look in 10 years' time, or how do you want the world to look?
I don't really want to answer like where I think we're going to be. I you know, probably people who listen to this podcast are aware of like the numerous new oil licenses that were signed recently, the pushback on net zero targets, which is really disappointing and disheartening, because there's this weird phrase that keeps bandied around, like, we can't afford it. And I'm like, we can't afford not to.
I know.
We cannot afford not to do this. And all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. And, by not spending £1 today, we'll probably end up spending £10 in the future. That's what I genuinely believe will happen. And the impact that we'll be able to have in the future for that £10 will be significantly less than the £1 we could have spent today, unfortunately. I do think that the grassroots movements, XR and, Just Stop Oil, those sorts of places, they'll continue to grow. They'll continue to attract young people who don't have a future without some meaningful, drastic change in society. And in 10 years' time, people will look back at probably things that we take for granted and do today and be like horrified. 100 years' time, probably even more so. I think where we'll be in 10 years' time, where I'd like us to be, is pulling those net zero targets closer. Like, let's not go to 2035. Let's bring it closer than that. But also acknowledging that it's not just a problem in the UK. Like, if we hit net zero by our targets, like, great, absolutely fantastic. But there's so many other countries out there that are currently like emerging, going through their sort of economical revolution in a way, and they need us to be there and support and guide and provide infrastructure so they don't have to go down the route of using heavy fossil fuels. Because if we don't get everybody on board, then we're not going to win this. And it's not a case that the planet's not going to die. The Earth will not die by us using fossil fuels. Humans will eradicate themselves. Like, that's basically what is going to happen.
That's what I feel like everybody forgets. It's like, oh, I don't care about the planet, but do you not care about yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
We will basically push ourselves, not the planet, off the cliff, or life as well. But life will return. Whether humans return to this planet once they're gone is probably a minuscule possibility. But the planet will survive, ultimately. It will go on and probably regenerate and recuperate once we're gone. But we will have eradicated ourselves. So I really don't understand why people think we can't afford it. I mean, I don't think we're going to be at that point in 10 years' time, but I do think we'll probably be experiencing more significant weather events. There'll be more, possibly another pandemic.
It's kind of like we're just going to make it a crapper version of what it is.
Yeah, it's a bit like, it feels a little bit like, how cells regenerate, and each time a cell regenerates, it's like a slightly less perfect copy of the cell that it's come from, which is basically how aging starts. Like, it's almost like that's what society's doing at the minute. It's just like trying to replicate a version of a period of time that was really successful, and like all we're doing is like making a 90% copy or an 80% copy, and the next copy is like, again, like a proportion knocked off, and that just can't go on. Like, otherwise we're just going to end up in like self-perpetuating recessions and economical like downfalls, and like, yeah, this isn't really painting a very nice picture for the future.
Yeah, I feel pretty depressed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anything good?
I think what I would like to take away from this is that I do think communities will grow stronger in the movements. I do think we'll start to hear about this topic being raised more, because as the younger generations come through and become voting age, and they're concerned about these things because they don't have a future if we keep going the way we go, well, of course, politicians are going to have to start listening to it and start creating policies that actually do something about it. So my hope is for people that follow me and sort of generations that can sort of frame themselves in that mind where your lifespan is not the most important thing. Like, the people who follow you, you want to give them the best chance to be successful, live a happy life. And it goes beyond you as an individual.
Well said.
Yeah, I hope that's right. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. We hope it was truly worth your while. For more information, visit reuserbox.co.uk/worth your while.
And if you'd like to appear on the next series of Earth Your Wow, please email media@reuserbox.co.uk.